Something that has intrigued a lot of fans ever since chapter 10 of Boruto is Momoshiki's ability to seemingly stop time. People ask so many questions about it. Does Momoshiki have a time manipulation ability? If so, how does it work? What are its weaknesses? And why didn't he use it against Naruto and Sasuke? Will Boruto eventually be able to use this ability? Is this ability limited to Momoshiki, or can other otsutsuki do this too? And is Momoshiki literally stopping time, or does it just look that way when in reality, it's not even an ability at all? To answer these questions, we should start by looking at all of the scenes where Momoshiki does this time stop thing, and examine how the scenes are depicted and the things Momoshiki and Boruto say and do. And we'll look at these scenes in both the manga and the anime. So the first time Momoshiki does this is in chapter 10 when he tells Boruto his prophecy and gives him the karma seal. At first, Boruto is just bothered by some odd feeling he can't help but notice, but then Momoshiki comments on how Boruto can sense his presence, and then Boruto sees Momoshiki sitting on a ledge, and I find it funny how Momoshiki, for some odd reason, is sitting on these really sharp spikes, like, ow? No wonder he jumps down right afterwards. But anyway, when Boruto notices Momoshiki, he turns around to yell to Naruto, and that's the first time you see these white floaty things that depict that time has stopped. And that's when Boruto first says that it feels as if time has stopped. And then Momoshiki jumps down to Boruto, and Boruto says that he can't move, just like everyone else. And then Momoshiki tells Boruto his prophecy and grabs his hand to give him the karma seal. All the while Boruto still cannot move. He can see what's happening, but he can't move to do anything about it. Similarly, Sasuke is also shown being able to see what's happening with his Rinnegan, but he's also unable to move to do anything about it, just like Boruto. And he also says that it wasn't something as simple as paralysis. It felt as if time itself had been stopped in chapter 11. So when Momoshiki first appears, Boruto is still able to move, which is how he literally turns around to yell to Naruto. But when he tries to yell to Naruto, that's when the white clouds appear, and all of a sudden Boruto can't move, and time appears to have stopped for everyone else. Almost as if Momoshiki did this to prevent Naruto and Sasuke from intervening, with Momoshiki giving Boruto the karma seal. Although it's not like Naruto sensed Momoshiki anyway, and Sasuke might not be able to actually physically interact with Momoshiki either. He might only be able to see him and nothing more. Now, a key detail I want to point out is that while time appears to have stopped for Naruto and the Kage, time hasn't really stopped for Boruto or Sasuke. They just can't move. Naruto is essentially put on pause for a minute and then resumes as if nothing has happened, but this is not the case for Boruto and Sasuke. They're frozen in place, but they can still feel the sensation of time passing as they watch Momoshiki move around and talk to Boruto, and Boruto is still able to think about how strange this ordeal is. Boruto and Sasuke just say it's as if time has stopped. That doesn't mean that time has actually stopped, that's just how they describe the feeling. The fact is, they still saw what Momoshiki was doing and could remember it afterwards, as if time had never stopped for them. So Momoshiki could be stopping time, but he could also just be doing something that feels that way without actually stopping time, as Boruto and Sasuke are blatantly experiencing time passing. And this sort of thing isn't a new concept in Naruto, but we'll come back to that later on. Now, if we look at how this scene is depicted in episode 65 of the anime, it's quite different from the manga as it occurs during the Rasengan clash rather than after Momoshiki dies, and it takes place in some other spiritual plane rather than the exact same dimension they were in originally like in the manga. The anime version pretty much looks identical to Naruto and Sasuke's ninshu conversation during the Rasengan vs Chidori clash in the 5 Kage Summit arc, where they enter this white spiritual plane and have a conversation with each other, and the same thing happens during their final battle at the end of part 2. And it's also just like Naruto and Obito's ninshu conversation while they're ripping the Biju out of Obito. And I've expressed a similarity in a previous video about how Momoshiki's soul lingered around to give Boruto the karma seal after he was already dead. The ninshu-like depiction of this scene in the anime is very telling, and I'll return to this later on too. And unlike the manga, where it seems as though Momoshiki appears first and then time stops afterwards, these two things seem to happen at the same time in the anime, which leads us to a different conclusion about what's happening, but we'll put a pin in that for now. I'll also add that it's not unreasonable at all for Sasuke to have seen this spiritual conversation, given how he was able to see Kurama inside Naruto in the Tenchi Bridge arc without touching Naruto or connecting his chakra to Naruto's, and Kurama literally says, "You can actually see me, thanks to that abominable Sharingan." And Sasuke was also able to speak to Kurama and even suppress his chakra. And since that point, Sasuke has gone on to progress those 3 Tomoe Sharingan into an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and a Rinnegan, where his Rinnegan can even see Madara's invisible limbo clones that exist in another dimension. His ability to see this sort of thing has only been amplified, so Sasuke seeing this spiritual conversation is completely reasonable based off of what he does in Naruto, especially if this Momoshiki and Boruto scene was a ninshu conversation. Moving on though, we don't see this mysterious time-stopping phenomenon again until chapter 65 when Boruto has a heart attack, where we once again see these white floaty things as Momoshiki shows up to switch places with Boruto, and Boruto once again comments on how he can't move and that it feels like time itself was stopped. Now when this happens, Momoshiki jumps down from a tree branch and walks up to Boruto as he talks to him, while Boruto is able to see Momoshiki as he talks and moves around, and he's also able to speak to Momoshiki and think about the situation, how it's similar to when Momoshiki gave Boruto the Karma Seal. By contrast, Code, Kawaki, Eida, and Damon are shown frozen in place and have no idea that this conversation ever happened in the first place, just like Naruto and the Kage back in chapter 10 in episode 65. In the anime version, it's pretty much the same here, except Code is about to slash Boruto before time stops, and instead of seeing the white floaty things in the background warps into a new blue tinted space where time appears to be stopped, but everything else is the same. Now something to note is that Momoshiki's appearance, time stopping, and Boruto being unable to move all appear to happen at the same time in this scene, unlike in chapter 10 where Momoshiki appeared and started talking before time was stopped, where Boruto all of a sudden couldn't move anymore. And when time stops again in chapter 67, Momoshiki's appearance and time stopping occurs at the same time again, but this time Boruto is actually able to move in both the anime and the manga versions, as he moves his hand to touch the karma marking on his chest, while Naruto and Shikamaru are frozen in place. Now there's 4 possible explanations for this. Option 1 is that Boruto being unable to move is merely a result of Momoshiki suppressing Boruto's soul, and he did this to give Boruto the Karma Seal in chapter 10, and to take control of his body in chapter 65. But then in chapter 67 and beyond, he didn't bother doing this because he was simply talking to Boruto rather than trying to take control. Option 2 is that Boruto is now able to move while time is stopped because he is 100% otsutsuki now, where perhaps he could sense Momoshiki before due to his inherited otsutsuki genetics, but he couldn't move in this state until he was a pure otsutsuki like he is now. Option 3 is kind of a blend of the first 2 options, and it's that Boruto couldn't move in chapters 10 or 65 due to Momoshiki suppressing Boruto's soul, but in chapter 67 and onward, Momoshiki simply can't suppress Boruto's soul so easily anymore, either because Boruto's resolve is strengthened or because he's 100% otsutsuki now. And option 4 is that it's just an inconsistency because Kishimoto and Ikimoto got a bit lazy and didn't pay attention to the smaller details when they wrote and drew this scene. I think the first and third options are probably the most likely because Momoshiki really isn't trying to take over Boruto's body in chapters 67, 72, or 78, but it's also true that Momoshiki is throwing a fit and having trouble taking over Boruto's body in chapter 80, so both could honestly work. But regardless of which option it is, Boruto was able to move this time, but otherwise everything is pretty much the same as chapter 65. And one small difference between the manga and anime is that in the manga we see the white floaty things when Momoshiki regenerates Boruto's heart and lungs, whereas in the anime Momoshiki is shown healing Boruto in the normal colored background that depicts time moving normally, rather than doing this in the blue background that depicts that time is stopped. Now, the next 2 scenes are manga only so far and a little more ambiguous. The first is when Momoshiki talks to Boruto in chapter 72 to tell him that he will despair very soon, and the second is when Momoshiki talks to Boruto after setting Kawaki free in chapter 78. In both scenes, we see the white clouds that indicated that time is stopped in the previous scenes, but Boruto is still able to move in chapter 72 just like in chapter 67, and he never mentions in either of these 2 chapters that it feels like time was stopped again like he did the first 2 times, either because he's just used to it at this point, or because time didn't stop in these scenes. But because we saw the white clouds, and nobody ever interrupts these scenes to ask who Boruto is yelling at, or why Momoshiki is standing there, I get the impression that these 2 scenes are just like the ones in chapter 67, where time was stopped. Now as for when Momoshiki talks to Boruto in his head in chapter 75, 76, 79, and 80, it doesn't seem like time was stopped in any of these scenes because we don't see the white clouds we usually see when time stops, and Eida also notices Boruto acting strange in chapter 75, Kawaki notices Boruto acting strange and seemingly talking to Momoshiki in chapter 76, and Boruto literally talks to Momoshiki in front of Sasuke, Eida, and Damon in chapter 80. so I'm pretty sure time is moving normally in these scenes. So now that we've covered all the timey-wimey scenes in both the manga and the anime, let's look at some of the common trends between all of the scenes. The first thing to point out is that in all of these scenes, the only person Momoshiki ever interacts with is Boruto. He never speaks to anyone else, and he never touches anyone else, and I don't think he can. Momoshiki literally told Boruto that it was a perfect chance to kill Code in chapter 65, but instead of just killing Code while time was stopped, time resumes with Momoshiki in control of Boruto's body, where he then starts fighting Code. This seems counterproductive. If it was possible for Momoshiki to do this, wouldn't the perfect chance to kill Code be when time is stopped and he can't resist Momoshiki whatsoever? He's not fighting Code out of pride. He's fighting Code because he has the Ten Tails and wants to feed Boruto to it, whereas Momoshiki wants to steal the Ten Tails and feed Kawaki to it. So why not kill him while time was stopped if he could? Similarly, Momoshiki clearly attempts to kill Naruto at the end of chapter 65 because he considers Naruto to be a nuisance to him, but then in chapter 67, when he's standing right next to Naruto while time is stopped, he doesn't proceed to kill Naruto when Naruto can't resist him. It's not like Momoshiki doesn't want to kill Naruto anymore. Naruto is still a nuisance to Momoshiki, and he's still salty about losing to Naruto and Sasuke in the first place. And it's not like Momoshiki cares if it's a fair fight either, considering he was totally cool with Code making Naruto stand still under the threat of killing Shikamaru, so he wouldn't care if Naruto couldn't move this time around either. So why not kill Naruto when he has the perfect chance to do so? In fact, this would probably be a great way to start making Boruto despair and lose hope in himself, because even after Kawaki killed Boruto, Momoshiki would have just healed Boruto and proceeded to kill Naruto anyway. Talk about a slap in the face. That actually makes the Momoshiki situation feel hopeless for Boruto, but Momoshiki didn't do this. He also didn't just kill Naruto or Sasuke when time was stopped in chapter 10, and he also didn't just stop time so that he never lost to Naruto and Sasuke in the first place, or so that he could beat Sasuke up and teleport Kawaki away unresisted in chapter 54, or so that he could beat Kawaki up in chapter 66. Why? Probably because he can't. It would be way too OP if he could. No one would have been able to stop Momoshiki from killing Naruto, Sasuke, and Code, and no one would have been able to stop Momoshiki from teleporting Kawaki away to another dimension before Kawaki's karma seal was restored. It would certainly make Boruto's situation pretty hopeless, but it would be too hopeless. What is Boruto supposed to do at that point? Furthermore, while it would raise the stakes in regards to Momoshiki, it would also lower the stakes in conflicts with Code, Kawaki, and Yamato, as Code would be dead, Kawaki would be helplessly stranded in another dimension and unable to kill Boruto, and Yamato would have lost Kawaki, who was the key to his master plan. In addition, if Boruto were to acquire this ability, then it would be hard for any antagonist to pose any real conflict and sense of threat to Boruto and his friends, because Boruto would be able to just stop time and solve every problem, and if the enemy could still fight in that state, then the ability would just become redundant as it wouldn't be helping Boruto in any way. So it is incredibly unlikely that Momoshiki can affect the outside world while time is stopped. He can only affect Boruto, who he has a chakra connection with, and I'll come back to this idea shortly. But this already narrows things down considerably. If this is indeed one of Momoshiki's abilities, it's not what people make it out to be. It's not something Boruto's going to be able to use in battle to instantly defeat his opponents. The most it's going to do is allow Boruto or Momoshiki to talk to each other and think about a solution to their problem, but they won't be able to act upon it until time is resumed, just like what happened in chapter 65. Now, the next thing to point out is that the only characters who are ever shown being able to experience time when time is supposedly stopped are Momoshiki himself, Boruto, and Sasuke when he had the Rinnegan. In Momoshiki's case, he's literally the cause of this ordeal, so it's no surprise he can move around freely. In Sasuke's case, he literally says in chapter 11 that it's because he was watching with the Rinnegan, so anyone with a Rinnegan can probably do the same. And in Boruto's case, there's two possible explanations. The first is that it's because Boruto already possessed Byakugan blood or otsutsuki genetics, as Momoshiki pointed out in chapter 10, where Momoshiki seems to have attributed Boruto sensing his presence to Boruto's genetics. So perhaps the otsutsuki powers are necessary to experience time while it's stopped for everyone else, where Sasuke's Rinnegan would be an example of one of these otsutsuki powers. The second explanation is that it's because Boruto and Momoshiki's chakras were connected, and have remained connected ever since Momoshiki gave Boruto the Karma Seal. This is in reference to a ninshu conversation. where Sasuke's Rinnegan would simply be a dojutsu capable of peering into that conversation, similar to what he did with Naruto and Kurama in the Tenchi Bridge arc. Both explanations are plausible, but my main contention with the first one is that Naruto, Kawaki, Code, Eida, and Daemon all possess Otsutsuki genetics or Otsutsuki powers in one way or another, yet they all were stopped in time. Kawaki was 80% Otsutsuki on a genetic level. It was certainly more Otsutsuki than Boruto was in Chapter 10. So if Otsutsuki genetics were the key, then Kawaki should have been in the same boat as Boruto or Sasuke, but he wasn't. Sure, Kawaki hadn't wished for his Karma Seal back yet, so he couldn't use all of his Otsutsuki powers at the time, but neither could Boruto in Chapter 10. Boruto doesn't even have his Jogan activated during this scene in the manga, nor does he really know how to use it in the anime. Even if you want to say Boruto's Jogan and Otsutsuki power sup deep within Boruto, Ishiki's power sup deep within Kawaki. Amato even explained this much to Sumire in Chapter 59. So whatever case you want to make for Boruto, the same thing applies to Kawaki and is even stronger in Kawaki's case. Furthermore, Code, Eida, and Daemon all possess Otsutsuki powers and specifically Shinjutsu powers, and Eida and Daemon also have special Otsutsuki dojutsu that were brought about by Shibai Otsutsuki's DNA. So all four of these characters possess even greater levels of Otsutsuki DNA and or Otsutsuki powers than Boruto and Sasuke possessed in Chapter 10. Yet Boruto was the only one experiencing time when time was stopped in Chapter 65. However, what Boruto had that the others lacked was a chakra connection with Momoshiki, so it makes sense why he'd be the odd one out who can experience time when the others couldn't. On top of that, when we look at how the anime portrays these time stop scenes, we see Boruto and Momoshiki enter this new orange dimension in episode 65, when Momoshiki tells Boruto his prophecy and gives him the Karma Seal, where this scene is nearly identical to Naruto and Sasuke's Ninshu moment in the 5 Kage Summon arc like I said earlier. And in episode 291, there's a warp effect as the scene cuts to black and enters this new blue tinted space where time is stopped. Then it shifts to orange in episode 293 when Momoshiki starts being devious. And then when time is resumed, the color returns to normal again. All of this makes it look like these scenes are taking place in some other mind space or plane of existence. And if that is the case, the only people who would probably go to this other mind space would be Momoshiki and whoever Momoshiki's chakra is connected to, which would just be Boruto. And again, Sasuke can probably peer into this the same way he did with his Sharingan back in Naruto. This would also explain why Momoshiki can't affect the outside world here, as he's not in the normal world to affect it in the first place. He would need an ability like Madara's Limbo that can affect the normal world while existing in another world to pull that off, but as far as we can tell, he doesn't have anything like that. As a result, the only person Momoshiki can interact with is the only other person in that mind space, which would be Boruto. It's the same idea as how Minato couldn't just go fight Pain when he was just a chakra ghost inside Naruto. The only people Minato could talk to and interact with were Naruto and Kurama, who all had a chakra connection because of Minato's sealing formula. And the way Minato just snaps his fingers and transports himself and Naruto to another mind space so they don't have to listen to Kurama is a lot like when Momoshiki just turns the background orange in episode 293 of Boruto, and you can probably see the direction this is heading. All of this information points us to two potential conclusions. Either Momoshiki has the ability to stop time, but he can only interact with those whose chakra is connected to his, or it's not actually an ability and instead it's just a ninshu type of thing. Perhaps it's the Otsutsuki Shinjutsu version of ninshu. If it is some sort of ability, then the ability I draw the closest comparison to is Itachi Tsukuyomi, and this is what I was referring to near the beginning of the video. As we all know, Itachi can make his genjutsu feel like a really long time for the person under its effect despite it only taking place in just a moment of real time, where Itachi made Kakashi suffer by being stabbed for 72 hours in part 1, while Asuma and Kurenai just felt Kakashi go from being perfectly fine to collapsing to the ground a moment later. And in the novels, Itachi made his girlfriend live out her entire life and die of old age married to Itachi in only a picosecond of real time. So this could be some sort of Shinjutsu ability that's similar in concept, where Momoshiki can stop time but it can only affect anyone whose chakra is connected to his, similar to how Itachi can only affect whoever is under his genjutsu. However, after all the ninshu comparisons I've made and will continue to make, the only reasons why I even give some credence to the idea that this is one of Momoshiki's abilities are because Momoshiki had already appeared and started talking before time seemingly stopped in chapter 10, making it look as if Momoshiki activated an ability to stop time, And they've also repeatedly mentioned how it feels as if time has stopped, which they never did in Naruto during any ninshu moments. That being said, the chapter 10 scene is the only time Momoshiki's appearance and time stopping occurs at separate times, and the anime doesn't do this in any of the time stopping scenes, so that could simply be a retcon or something Kodachi Nikimoto just didn't pay too close attention to. Furthermore, while they never mention time stopping in Naruto, many ninshu moments occur in what feels like a while for the ninshuers, but it seems to happen in an instant in the real world. For example, when Naruto and Sasuke have their Rasengan vs Chidori clash in the 5 Kage Summon arc, it gets really bright as they fade away into this white mind space where they proceed to have a whole conversation where their hands are at their sides instead of in front of them using the jutsu, and then when their conversation ends, the scene cuts back to their jutsu clashing like it was never interrupted. Naruto then goes on to ask Sasuke if he remembers what he told Naruto at the Final Valley about how, when two shinobi are of a high enough level, they can read each other's thoughts through no more than a trade of blows. They don't need to say a word. And then Naruto says that now he does learn all sorts of things just from trading blows with Sasuke. The implication isn't that they were just standing there talking, or that they were just standing there clashing their jutsu while they were talking in their minds. It's that their thoughts connected when they clashed their jutsu, but it's portrayed to us as a conversation during the jutsu clash. In other words, the ninshu conversation might feel like a few minutes to Naruto and Sasuke, but it actually happens in just an instant of real time, which is why Kakashi, Sakura, Obito, and Zetsu don't feel like it was an oddly long clash. As far as they're aware, the ninshu conversation never happened. They just clashed their jutsu and that's it. And the exact same thing happens in Naruto and Sasuke's final fight at the end of Shippuden. Another example is when Naruto and his teammates are ripping the Biju out of Obito. They start the tug of war in chapter 652, and Kurama tells Naruto that Obito's heart will flow into Naruto because Naruto's chakra is connected to Obito's. And eventually Naruto and Obito enter this light blue mind space where they proceed to have a conversation for 2 chapters and episodes before they finally rip the Biju out of Obito, and nobody notices that it was an absurdly long tug of war or that Naruto was talking to Obito except for Minato, who also saw inside Obito's heart while they played Chakra tug of war. Another example is in the Tenchi Bridge arc when Sasuke pops in Naruto's mind space with Kurama. Sasuke stabs Yamato and then looks over at Naruto, who is leaking some of Kurama's chakra, where Naruto then starts talking to Kurama, who's trying to convince Naruto to use his power, while Naruto refuses. Then Sasuke appears and talks to Kurama and then suppresses him. All the while, Naruto, Sasuke, Yamato, and Sai haven't moved an inch from where they were while Sasuke was distracted looking at Naruto and talking to Kurama. And only when their conversation ends does Yamato finally use his wood style to remove Sasuke's blade and try to imprison him. Another example is when Naruto fights Kurama to acquire his power. Kushina helps Naruto by using her adamantine chains to pin Kurama down in chapter 498, and then she proceeds to tell Naruto the whole story of how she and Minato met and fell in love. And meanwhile, Kurama does absolutely nothing until after Kushina is done telling her story, and only then does he finally decide to rip the chains off. And another example is when Naruto talks to the Four-Tailed Son Goku in the war arc. Son eats Naruto and then Naruto enters Son's mind and they talk to each other for 8 pages in chapter 568 and 1 page in chapter 569 before Naruto opens his eyes, and it's only then that Obito decides to use his chains to suck both the Nine Tails and the Four Tails inside of him. And I could go on and on giving more examples, but the point is that you either have to assume that the other characters are just standing there doing nothing while Naruto talks to people in another mind space, or that these conversations just happen in an instant in real time. If you go with the latter option so the characters don't look as stupid, then these scenes would basically be the same as the Momoshiki ones if Naruto just commented on the fact that it feels as if time has stopped like Boruto did. As far as we're aware, time did stop, and that's why Obito didn't start sucking in the Four Tails sooner, and that's why Yamato didn't use Wood Style to remove Sasuke's blade sooner, and that's why nobody thought the Chakra tug of war with Obito took forever, and so on. Or alternatively, the ninshu moments occurred in just a moment of real time like Itachi Tsukuyomi, and this could be what's actually happening with the Momoshiki time stop scenes, but Momoshiki just lets his mind space look like the real world. But in episode 65, it looks like a completely different place. It can even change the colors from blue to orange, so he seems to have some control over what it looks like. Again, you can think of it as the Shinjutsu version of ninshu if you want. Now, for anyone who might be wondering how Momoshiki was able to give Boruto the Karma Seal if that was actually just a ninshu moment, I like to compare it to when Hagoromo gave Naruto and Sasuke his chakra in the Sun and Moon seals in Hagoromo's mind space, or when Minato just rebuilt the seal on Kurama by using the same sealing jutsu again in their own mind space, or when Son Goku and the other Tail Beasts gave their chakra to Naruto in the Tail Beast mind space. Hagoromo, Minato, and the Tail Beasts all did something to Naruto inside a separate mind space, but it still affected Naruto's body in the real world too. The Hagoromo situation is the best comparison because he literally gave Naruto and Sasuke a power-up and a special seal on their hands, just like Momoshiki did to Boruto. Hagoromo and Momoshiki just had completely different intentions. And as far as how Momoshiki would be able to restrict Boruto from moving in chapters 10 and 65, I'd compare it to how Kurama was able to just telepathically rip open Naruto's jacket and open his seal to spill out this black liquid and then make Naruto's eyes turn red and walk towards Kurama's seal like a zombie, or how Kurama just roared Orochimaru out of Naruto's mind space in chapter 292 during the Tenchi Bridge arc, or how Sasuke just suppressed Kurama's power later in that arc, or how Hana Sensei's evil half just chained the nice half up in their mind space during the Kawaki Academy arc, and so on. The characters do some wacky stuff in their own mind spaces, and given how much stronger Momoshiki was than Boruto in chapters 10 and 65, it's not too crazy that he could paralyze him. I mean, Orochimaru was able to paralyze Kakashi just by looking at him, so anything's possible. At the end of the day, the whole time stop thing is just weird. The scenes aren't all consistent in the manga, they're not all consistent in the anime, they're not consistent between the manga and the anime, and some ninshu moments in Naruto seem like they pause the rest of the world while it's happening, while others seem as though they're happening in real time while everything else is going on. All of this makes it difficult to pinpoint what exactly is going on with Momoshiki here. The anime really makes it look like a ninshu chakra connection thing, especially in episode 65 when Momoshiki gives Boruto karma, while the manga makes it look like it might be an ability, but it's a bit iffy. My video about how Momoshiki gave Boruto the karma seal after dying is what inspired this video though, because a lot of you guys brought up the whole time stopping thing, and that got me thinking about it because this still wouldn't explain to me how Momoshiki would have lingered around after death so that he could stop time in the first place, bringing me back to the same conclusions I had in that video, where my main conclusion was that Momoshiki made a chakra connection with Boruto during the Rasengan clash, in one way or another, especially in light of how the anime did that scene. And if that was the case, then Momoshiki stopping time in that moment using this hypothetical ability, or them just having a ninshu moment, would effectively achieve the same result. So in light of everything I said in this video, I really don't think this is going to be some OP ability that Boruto or Momoshiki use to destroy their opponents in the future. It's either going to be a simple ability that can't actually do as much as people expect it to, or it's literally not an ability at all, and it's just how Ikimoto depicts their ninshu conversation, either because that's just how he wants to draw it, or because Momoshiki is an otsutsuki with Shinjutsu, and his ninshu stuff is a little bit more powerful. But I want to hear what you guys think. What exactly do you think is happening during all of these time stop scenes? Do you think it's an ability, or do you think it's just a ninshu conversation type of thing? And if you think it's an ability, how do you think it works? Do you think it's similar to what I've described, or do you think it works completely differently? Let me know in the comment section below, but that's a wrap on today's video, so thank you guys for watching until the end.
You're already under my genjutsu.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, check out my podcast channel, become a member, and hit the bell icon for notifications.
Sorry, Sasuke. Maybe some other time.
Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.